Last hour, we had Fuad Fakari with us, who I found out has a doctorate. I was kidding him, calling him Dr. Fakuri. Today, I have the Doctor of Positivity with me, and he is a good friend, Paul White. Paul, good morning.
Well, good morning, Art. Hey, Mom and Dad, look. I know you're looking down from heaven. I've arrived. I'm on the Art Lewis Show. My life is nearly complete.
Okay, Mom and Dad, he's done. No.
Well, they're probably saying, what do you mean nearly complete? It's like, what would make it complete? It's like, well, if I get asked a second time to be on the show.
My parents are probably looking, going, is that all you could do with your life?
No, you know that's not true.
We kid about it, though. So, Paul, I don't know if I ever asked you this. What got you into this, for lack of a better phrase, positivity mode of life?
Yeah, well, and I think it began as a young child. I've always been the most curious person in the world, and you and I share that. We're both very curious and everything, and I realized early on when I was very young, I had a friend who lived down the street with muscular dystrophy, and not everyone was willing to play with Joe. But I was, and I found great joy. It always made me feel good after playing with him and stuff. And I always remember, I don't remember his dad, but I always remember his mom appreciated it so much and stuff. And so that really kind of set a course for me in life. When I became an adult, I started reading all these books that had huge impacts on my life. One of them was The Noticer, which is a book written by Andy Andrews, and the subtitle is Sometimes All a Person Needs is a Little Perspective. And I started thinking about the word perspective and how it impacts all of our lives. And I started, at that time, trying to manage my perspective because I could see that our perspective leads to our choices. Our choices lead to consequences, some good, some not good, and everything. So I was really enamored. There's a little blurb in the book. The book is about Andy's real life. He was homeless for a while, living down on the Gulf Shores in Alabama. And there was a mentor he had, this guy called Jones. And kind of reminds me of you, Art. And this guy was trying to help him. And so one day they were sitting on the beach and sitting in the sand. And Jones had brought lunch. And lunch consisted of one of those little tin cans of Vienna sausages and a tin can of sardines.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but Andy, food was... He was homeless,
scarce,
so
right.
Yeah. So they're talking about it and stuff, and as Jones is trying to teach Andy a lesson, he asked him about what they had just experienced, and Andy said, "What do you mean? We ate sardines and Vienna sausages here in the sand." And he goes, "That's your perspective. My perspective was that I enjoyed surf and turf with an oceanside view."
That's interesting. I mean, that really is a descriptive.
Yeah. No, what a perfect example. And so, I'm constantly trying to manage my perspective. And recently, our son Adam, who's 27 years old.
Tell everybody about Adam.
Yeah, he has Down syndrome, and he's been a type 1 diabetic since the age of 2. My wonderful wife, Kim, has been his, literally, pancreas, giving him insulin when he needs insulin and managing his intake of carbohydrates and eating healthy food and everything. So we had a little scare recently. He's 27 now, and things were moving in a negative direction to the point that on a Saturday evening about 6 o'clock, we went to the emergency room. And when we got to the emergency room, they started working on him. And first of all, the medical community, I don't care who you are. If you work in the medical community, you are an angel. every person that works and I don't care if it's the person cleaning the floors and the walls
Takes a team.
It's unbelievable the contribution they make, and we take for granted that we can get in the car, go to an emergency room, and receive care.
Then on top of that, we expect somebody else to pay for it.
Well, and
it's just goes with it.
But it's just amazing that we have that option,
Absolutely.
and we kind of take it for granted because so many people in this world don't. So, anyways, we're at the hospital and we're witnessing all these people. It's funny. I had just written an article entitled "What Are You Truly Committed to?" That day, it came out in the paper. As we went to the emergency room, and I'm watching all these people do their job. This one RM, her name was Allie Yambrick, and she was so committed to doing her job and not just providing care. She was providing compassionate care. I mean, we just felt that we were being taken care of by her in more ways than just the delivery of health care.
Well, it's funny you bring that up because it is a lot of times we used to measure doctors by their bedside manner.
Yeah.
And that to me was always meant to me, does he care or is he just, here to do his thing and leave, And I've been very fortunate in my life. Every doctor I've ever had has had great bedside manner,
Yeah. Well, and
personalities.
It was interesting because we witnessed all kinds of people. We were there for 4 days, and
Whoa.
And
this was more serious than just a
he
quick
went to the emergency room to ICU, and then from ICU to progressive care, and they had a difficult time diagnosing what was wrong with him. And it was on the fourth day that we did get a diagnosis. The hospitalist came almost like dancing into the room. He was so excited. We know what was wrong and we know what to do and stuff. But on the fourth day, I was sitting there in the morning. And, my wife and I have this thing that when someone we love or care about is in the hospital, we're with them 24/7. Yeah. And so Kim was sleeping at the hospital at night. I would go home, catch a few hours sleep, and then come back and let her go grab some sleep and stuff. And I'm sitting there, and by the fourth day, you know what? I needed a little encouragement. And I was seeking encouragement that I could share with Kim and Adam and the hospital staff and everything. So I'm searching on the internet, and, I'm fatigued, I'm overtired and everything, and I come upon this blog, and the title that was posted on the blog said, "Read this slowly. It'll change how you see your life."
All right, so let's stop there. I have to take a break. Come back and we'll get more on that. Paul White is our guest this morning, and we will be back with Paul after these notes.
Grab a 2026.
I'm Liz Clayman, and this is the Fox Business Report.
President Trump is allowing another 10 days for negotiations before the deadline to strike Iran's energy sector. Those stock futures are lower and crude oil prices are higher. Brent crude, the global benchmark, topped $110 a barrel this morning. West Texas Intermediate, which is U.S. oil, rose to $96. The head of fertilizer company Yara says farmers are facing higher costs because of the Iran conflict. CEO Svein Tore Hollister says farmers are likely to scale back fertilizer purchases and switch to crops that will pay them better given the uncertainty. And artificial intelligence company Anthropic has won a court injunction that pauses the Trump administration's designation of Anthropic as a supply chain risk. That's your Fox Business Report. I'm Jim Poselda. Invested in you.
Join Fox in supporting our troops. From daily needs to global emergencies, help us be there for those who serve. Visit go.fox/Red Cross to donate to service to the armed forces today.
The OHL playoffs are
back with you in studio with my friend Paul White, who many years an entrepreneur, but also a motivational speaker and writer who still writes. And we were talking about one that got your attention here, about your son Adam. And so what did you do about it?
So I'm there. I'm looking for some inspiration, some encouragement and everything. And I come upon this blog post whose title is "Read This Slowly. It'll Change How You See Your Life." And I thought to myself, okay, that's a pretty powerful statement. What's there?
Well, but that's the kind of thing you're accepting of to start with.
Yes. Yeah, it's like, okay, I'm looking. You've got my attention. Underneath, there were 4 things to ponder. Number 1, if there's food in your fridge, clothes on your body, a roof above, and a bed to sleep in, you're richer than 75% of the world. Number 2, if you have some money and the freedom to move, you're already in the top 18%. Number 3, if your body is healthy today, you're luckier than 1 million people who won't survive this week. And, you know, one of the things while we were in the hospital, we heard several code red and code blues over the 4 days that we were there. And we wondered how those people fared, you know, and who knew? I don't know what happened. But, again, you're luckier than 1 million people who won't survive this week. And number 4, and if you can read this, see this, understand this, you're more fortunate than 3 billion people who can't. And the blog post finished with, so pause, breathe, be thankful. You're already living someone else's prayer. And that's when the perspective hit me. What do you mean I'm already living someone else's prayer?
They're praying to be like.
Exactly. They're praying for the things that I take for granted. They would do anything if they could have those things. So I started thinking about all the things that areas that, you know, that I had to be grateful for in my life. And, you know, most of us rarely acknowledge, we ignore all those things.
However, that was timely for you to see it. But it didn't change you because you have always been that way.
Well, yeah, but what I was looking for, you know, I'm human. I need encouragement and inspiration, and I found some. And then what's the first thing I wanted to do? I wanted to share it.
Yeah, that's what
So it's like, Kim, you're not going to believe. Look what I just read and stuff. And I ended up writing an article about this so that I could share it with others.
Your articles are in the paper?
Yes. Midland Daily News and 22 other publications across the country. Yeah, they're syndicated
now.
So it's funny because so many of us, when we get into a situation, we say, why me? And Kim and I have learned through the years that,
let me follow that up because there's an extension to that saying, which I always found interesting.
Yeah, why not me?
No.
Oh.
Why me, Lord?
Yeah.
Who am I looking to blame for my situation?
Well, and it's funny because Kim and I have learned to forego attempting to answer what we consider the time-wasting question, why me? And we just move straight to getting busy with examining positive paths forward. It's like the time that you waste saying why me is sad. It's like, who cares why me? Just start working on finding a positive path forward. But, you know, we're human with emotions that swirl through our brain to the point of knowing when and how to ask for help. To be living someone else's prayers required us to lean heavily on our faith, the relationships we've nurtured with friends and family members, and being a person of action whenever we need to be. And in my article, I said, is that easy? Nearly never, but it is always worthwhile.
Yeah. As I listen to this, I think of myself, obviously, and try and relate to what you're saying. And what I discovered a number of years ago is when I sulk, when I, feel down about something that's not going right, it is totally, completely, 100% non-productive.
Yeah.
It does nothing for me, and until I snap out of it, nothing changes.
Well, and
now
that's
I've
the
learned
key.
Not to get into it.
Well, and preventing getting into it takes practice, and over time we can achieve that. But it's our human nature to go down that path. We're kind of raised that way. When something traumatic happens or something negative happens, our first thought typically is based on fear. Fear of what this means, fear of what's going to happen and everything. And fear is a horrible emotion to embrace because it doesn't lead to anywhere positive, nor does it lead to any solution.
A lot of that is unfortunately taught as you grow up and how your parents dealt with you. Because parents are very good at using fear as a method of getting result. And if that's all you learn, you carry that with you for the rest of your life. My parents, on the other hand, never used fear. My dad, if I did something stupid, and I was very good at that, by the way, my dad would sit me down and say, let's look at what you just did and how you shouldn't do it again and how you can correct it. That was his way. He didn't yell and scream, didn't take out a paddle or a belt. That's not to say if I really got out of line, he wouldn't think of swatting me, because he would. But it was always a positive discussion as opposed to being negative about it.
So one of the greatest gifts that your parents gave you was managing your perspective.
Yeah,
and your dad
exactly.
was intentional
He was.
in helping you learn how to manage your perspective. And of course,
Didn't think of it that way, but that's what it was.
right, any parent who's raising kids, you have successes and failures and everything. But if you keep moving them in the right direction or in a positive direction in the way they manage their perspective on everything, the results end up occurring as you intended when you have intention behind what you're doing.
And I've offered this example up many, many, many times. On the one hand, I laugh at it. On the other hand, I'm proud of the fact that it happened. I graduated high school in New York City with 1,600 kids in my graduating class. And I was young. I was 16 years old. And I figured, oh, well, summer's ahead. I'm going to have a great time. The day I got home from graduation, on the dining room table were New York City work papers filled out by my father for me and the address of the job, which started Monday. That's how he taught me work ethic. He didn't have to say anything. He says, there you are. Take you an hour and a quarter in the subway to get there, just so you know, so Monday morning be prepared. Thanks, Dad. That was my summer.
What's interesting about that story is what the basis of that was for your dad?
Teaching me something.
Complete and total love.
Well, yeah.
Love for his son.
That I never longed for that from either my dad or my mother.
Right.
But
and what a gift
yeah.
that was.
Yep. And he did it in his quiet way.
Yes.
Didn't have to make demands or anything.
Yes.
He just said, you understand what this is.
You didn't see it as love probably at the time, but that's exactly what it was.
Actually, I didn't see it as love, but I was a curious kid. And so I said, ooh, a new adventure. Not one I thought of, but I thought, oh, there's a new adventure. Okay.
What a great perspective.
Yeah. 5 days a week.
You could have fought it.
No,
Well,
not successfully.
not successfully. Yeah. Well, it's funny, when I read this blog, I started thinking even more to myself, something like, because Rotary has had this clean water initiative for
years.
forever, right? Trying to bring clean, drinkable water to the world, to all parts of the world, to all corners of the world. And I started thinking to myself, do you have access to 24/7 clean water? We do. But we take it for granted. Do we ever
We expect
think
it
about
to be
that?
there.
Yeah, we absolutely do. Do you know that 663 million people in the world don't have access? Do you have reliable transportation? 7% of the adults in the U.S. ages 18 to 34 don't have reliable transportation. Think of the challenges that poses for their life. So when you start looking at all this, it's funny. Gratitude is such a huge thing, and it's a great starting point for all the challenges that we all face, both now and will face in the future. And I like to think of it as gratitude. It's your new superpower.
Well, it's funny, we were talking before we went on the air about Joe Volk, who we both know. And Joe does a program here and a podcast called
I've listened to it. Yeah.
something Gratitude.
Yeah. Attitude of gratitude.
Well, I'll tell you what. We'll find out. I'll play it at the
yeah.
end. I got to take a break here. We'll play it at the Generating Gratitude. There
Yeah.
we go. And he's lived a life that I would call, by my perspective, a difficult one, particularly early on, because of addiction, and how he's overcome it, and how he continues to overcome it after 30 some odd years. And it's fascinating to listen to, because he has people on who have similar stories, and it certainly broadens your horizon as to what other people have gone through, and makes you be more thankful for what you have in many ways.
And what's great about Joe is everything that he does and says and communicates is to help others.
And he lives it.
He lives helping others. Yeah. And yes, he had this experience in his life that he learned a lot of lessons from, and he wants to help others.
And I'm going to tell you about perspective right now. Joe was on the radio at a competitor for many, many, many years. And I didn't know him very well. But I always kind of had maybe a sour view of what he did and how he did it. And so consequently, that impacts how you view the individual. And then, years later, here, I meet and get to know Joe and slap myself for being so stupid that I would prejudge somebody by that way.
Yeah. See,
perspective changed.
Art, at 83 years old, there's still hope for you.
Yeah. Not much, but there is
Oh,
some.
no, there's plenty.
We got to take a break. We'll be right back as we talk to Paul White. All right, we're back with you here on WSGW. Paul White in studio with me, Mr. Positive. Lectures all over the country, writes in 22 newspapers, positive stories, and lives the life the way he talks about it. So what else have you written lately? What other articles have you got?
Well, there was an article. I read a ton, and I was reading this book called Speaking from the Shadows, written by a guy named David Barringer. who was a youth pastor in Midland at church there for 6 years, and he's now a lead pastor down in Kalamazoo. But he suffers from depression, always has. Fourth generation pastor, and just, came out and said, look, I suffer from this. And it's a fascinating book. I've really been diving deep into mental health issues and trying to see things from a different perspective and everything. And in the book, he talks about the story of the Good Samaritan, which almost all of us can, come up with the story. It's, if you ask someone, what's the story about? It's like, well, someone's hurt on the side of the road and someone stops to help them. And it's funny because in the book, he goes into so much depth about the life lessons that are contained in that story. And I know it comes from the Bible, and I'm, not here to tell people that they need to read the Bible, although it
doesn't hurt.
But what happened is, the gist of the story is that there were two people. So this guy gets beat up by robbers. He gets robbed, he gets beaten, he's near death. There's two people that walk by him and don't do anything. And that reminded me of the book I had read, Under the Overpass, where these two individuals lived as homeless people without any support, any money or anything other than themselves for 5 months. And they weren't shown dignity, and people would walk on the other side of the street to avoid them when they saw them and stuff. And people sometimes even threw out some unkind comments. But this third guy comes along, and he doesn't judge. He just sees someone hurting, and he stops and renders help. So I came up with this little thing. He saw a need. He met a need. And then I started thinking about how all of us every day, we're walking by situations occur where there's a need that isn't being met. Someone's hurting or whatever, and we could fill that need and solve that need. And yet, what do most of us do? We choose to walk by. And, I got to admit, it's awful easy to dispense armchair justice and righteousness from the protection and comfort of our home, especially on social media. But I kept thinking, what if everyone in the world dispensed mercy instead? Because really, the story of this is someone who was dispensing mercy. And it was interesting that the mercy that they were dispensing, they didn't set out and say, now, look, you're hurting, but I need you to fill this questionnaire out first before I render any help. And I want to know about your race, religion, sex, political party, environmental views, educational background, and your current social status. None of that went on. He saw the need. He met the need. He helped. And I just keep thinking to myself, what a perspective for all of us to embrace, because you know what? There's so many needs out there. And getting righteous and delivering justice isn't really moving us in any kind of a positive direction.
And again, we go back to where we grew up and everything. In New York City, you were more than likely not to stop and render help.
Yeah.
And that's just the nature of the beast.
You're taught that, correct?
But no, I wasn't.
Most people are, though. It's like, don't talk to him, avoid eye contact.
My dad taught me, and I mean he taught me, not to judge others. But the one thing he told me that probably has impacted my life in a community like Saginaw more than anything, he said, son, don't just live someplace, be a part of it.
Yeah.
And I took that to mean contribute to the community. If you don't have the dollars, give them your time. Do what you can. And thus I've served on a lot of boards and things. Every time I do accept something over the years, I remember my dad.
Well, and you know what's so simple about what your dad said. You know what he really was saying? Take action.
Well, yeah, absolutely.
Because so many of
He was
us,
a
we
person
can
of action.
speak